So do we consider ourselves ready to get going for this afternoon's session? I know it's not easy after lunch and a delicious lunch to come back to a working session. But warmly welcome to all of you, Excellencies, Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, friends. It's great to have you here, so many in the room, for this session on water governance for a water-secure region. And I think that all of the sessions this far during the week have really emphasized how challenging the water situation is in this region. I want to, of course, thank our dear partners, AGWA, and also all of the participants and the panelists for making this Arab Water Week possible. And I'm very much looking forward also to today's, of course, discussion and this panel. We've heard it many times throughout yesterday and this morning, but we live in a world in a multi-crisis mode. The COVID-19 pandemic is still having many effects and continues to really disrupt societies, both when it comes to health perspectives, of course, but also economic development. We have conflicts across the world, and of course, for me as a European, the war in Ukraine is, of course, very high on the agenda. But that is definitely not the only conflict that is affecting us, with leading to immense human suffering, which is something that is, of course, very traumatizing. And we also face, on a day-to-day basis, water-related climate and ecological disasters that really threaten the world and the continuous development of the world. And what we say, and what I am here really to say, is that this requires an integrated and a cross-sectoral solution and solutions towards a more water and climate secure future for all. You probably have heard many of us say this before, but organizations working in the water sector, we always say that water is, of course, at the heart of Agenda 2030. But it's not just something that we say, it really is at the heart of Agenda 2030 and of all sustainable development goals. Health, obviously. Energy, yes, obviously. Food security, Gender equity. Diversity, biodiversity, ecosystems, climate change, and there you go. We've basically covered most of the sustainable development goals, and they have a water dimension to it. And that's what we're here to try to address. What can we do from a holistic perspective to address the water challenges in Agenda 2030? So addressing these water issues is actually absolutely urgent, and we need to speed up our efforts in a coherent and in an aligned manner. And it's very disruptive to see year after year those scattered efforts and the fragmentation of the water sector. So it is very important that we bring our acts together and try to really join forces here. I am the Chief Operating Officer at SIWI, the Stockholm International Water Institute, and I am truly delighted to announce the opening of a regional presence for SIWI in the region. We will be based here in Amman as of 1st of May 2023, so it's really in the final weeks of the paperwork that we are at. And it will be our regional office for West Asia, North Africa. So the SIWI WANA office is what we are planning to open up here on the 1st of May. Why? Why did we choose to open up a regional office for the WANA region? Well, SIWI is a think and a do tank. And this is not something that I say lightly, because the think tank is what gives us the credibility to do. And by doing, the do tank is really what gives us the legitimacy to think. So for us at SIWI, these two, think and do, are truly, truly interlinked and really dependent on one another. SIWI is an organization, as its name says, based in Stockholm, created in 1991 as a Swedish foundation, but in all essence working as an international NGO with a global scope when it comes to water and water governance in particular. We're based on 3 legs. One leg is because of our expertise, we distribute the Stockholm Water Prize together with the royal family, and we have the honor to also award the Stockholm Junior Water Prize. The second leg is that we host on an annual basis the World Water Week. We are now at the Arab Water Week, but every 3rd week of August in Stockholm there is the World Water Week. So an annual really gathering of the water community, but for everyone else on water issues. And the third leg for SIWI is really our operations, our programs and projects. And this is really where our focus is on improved water governance through a holistic approach. And this is what we are here to talk about, and this is why we are establishing the office in Amman for the region. It's really to be able to carry out and have much more closely our ears and eyes on the ground to respond to the needs and the demands that are here on improved water governance. Water governance, and my colleague Philip will come back to this later, but is really about the software side of what is often the hardware sector of water. When you think of water, you often think of infrastructure, pipes, dams, construction sites, boreholes, wells. But there is an incredibly important software side to it, institutions, legal frameworks, setups, regulations, institutions, again, that govern the water sector. And that is where SIWI's expertise lies. SIWI is in a phase of expansion, which is super exciting, of course, as the CEO of SIWI. We are in the process of developing our new strategy for 2024, spanning all the way to 2030. And this regionalization, really making sure that we are there where the needs and the demands are so that we're able to respond in an even better way to those needs and demands, are really part and parcel of this strategic development. So my message here today is really to say that SIWI is your partner. We want to accompany you in your journey towards a more water-secure region. And hopefully today's session will be a contribution to at least starting that journey in as many countries as possible. And again, count on SIWI to be your partner on that journey. Without further ado, thank you so much for this, and I would like to invite Philip to join me. Mr. Philip Beetlestone, my colleague, the Director of the Water Resource Cooperation Department at SIWI.
Thank you.
Philip.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Karen. Welcome. Thank you very much. Hope you had a good lunch and settled down. I just wanted to take the time to go over SIWI, of what we are as an organization, building on Karen's first points. Some of these points have been addressed already. There we go. Is that better? So, as SIWI, we are an organization that looks at bridging science, policy, and practice. As Karen said, that makes us a think and do tank. We sort of look at what actually is going on the ground, bringing that up into sort of more of the policy framework and unpacking it of saying what are the areas that one needs to look at to improve the water governance. As was said before, we are focused on water governance, not on the hardware side. And what underpins what we do is our vision is to have a water-wise world. What does that mean? it means a world where water is valued, essentially has a value, and then how we use it. Also, it's shared, it's a shared resource. So how do we look in cooperation together? How do we look at this resource? And how can we actually better use it both for the environment, but also for our economic development and for our health? And finally, is how do we look at that framework and how do we use it sustainably? That's where the water governance comes in. It's linked to water management, but the water governance say, okay, who gets what, when, and how? So we start to see, this starts to go into the policy framework, the plans, and how do you interact with other sectors, be it the agricultural sector or the mining sector, the power sector. So there's always this interlinkage. And for us, it is about cooperation, of cooperations between the different groups, and how do we actually get the best out of the value, out of the resource that we have, which is limited, be it groundwater, be it surface water. So it's balancing this, what our needs are with what the needs are of the environment, but also what are the needs of further development within a context. As within each context, there are different challenges. And what we do as SIWI, we work with partners on the ground, which is the national, so the regional economic bodies, or with countries regionally in transboundary cooperation, or nationally, or even down to subnational, a municipality. So how actually can we work together to use the resource effectively and sustainably? We work we have 91 staff from many different parts of the world. We are based in Sweden, but we are now expanding an office into the Wana region, based here in Amman, but we have an office in Pretoria in South Africa and one in Bogota in Colombia. And there we sort of support our regional programs, but also understanding the context in which we work, because we feel that it's important to have presence on the ground to understand that context. Either if we are in the region, we have that, like say, for example, in Oman, we will be here with the context, but also if we are not in the country, we develop relationship with partners that do understand that context, and then work with the municipalities, the government departments to actually deliver services based on what their needs are, and we walk through a process to develop those solutions. We basically have worked over in 85 countries since 2014. This number is continuing to grow, and we hope to expand it. Anywhere from water governance, which is my department, and transboundary water cooperation, or another aspect is in private sector engagement. That's another department that we have, which is with the Swedish Waterhouse, and of course, wash services. So this gives an overview of where our services are at this point. The question now comes of where do we work? It's quite a broad list, but as Karen pointed out, which I think is important for all of us in sort of looking back over the last few months, we do work in areas which are hazards. They are risks, they are hazards, be it flooding, be it drought, be it conflict, be it migration. So this is an area that we work in. COVID-19 is another one that we've had to deal with over the last few years. So what does water governance look like within these different configurations? But also when there is peace, where there is security, what does it also look like at that point in time? So we do have quite a number of areas we work in. We work in climate, we work in conflict, we work in diplomacy, but in transboundary cooperation, WASH, also on water efficiency. The list is quite long, I won't go into it, but I'll come back a little later to some of these and unpack them a bit. But the other point that I think we've not mentioned yet is, as SIWI, we actually, by having the International Water Week, we have again, I think the opportunity, but also the privilege to invite globally sort of leaders in the topics on water governance and water management to speak on this. So that convening power is quite a position to be in, and we always want to represent the most broad base that we can, be it from the north, be it from the south, be it from the east to the west. So what do we do? Oops, excuse me. I'll go back here. There we go. My computer does not want to, it's refusing. It's refusing, but no worries. What areas do we work on? We work, as Karen pointed out, in research. and basically looking at the fundamentals, emerging topics, research on how can we improve governance. That's one pillar. The other one is on implementation, where we're implementing projects on the ground with our partners to develop solutions. Another pillar would be on the advocacy and awareness, which is quite important, because that's where emerging topics that we're finding or sort of gaps that we're witnessing, where we can start to address them. The fourth pillar that we have is working on international processes. For example, with the Water Week being one, but we have now started to drive processes on water in the COP, for example, of looking at the water pavilion, supporting the water pavilion. And the upcoming UN Water Conference is also to influence that dialogue and also steer that as best we can with the knowledge that we have. So that's we try to influence overall policies in the international sphere. Then, from a programmatic approach, now moving away from the international policies piece, we look at providing technical assistance to governments, to municipalities, capacity building programs, research and knowledge production, be, for example, with our colleagues here in Just University. We have not started at this point in time, but hopefully in the future we can sort of develop this. We also develop tools and methodologies, which I'll go into into a second, and of course, knowledge and awareness. Looking at the tools that we use, through this of how do we actually do our work, we create tools for the implementation. I won't go through all of them. We have quite many. But it's a range from looking at a more holistic approach to basin management, to actually looking at city approaches, and also to resilience. And I won't go into these here in the interest of time. But again, there's a city water resilience approach. That's one that we work in partnership with ARAP. We also have the source to sea approach, which has been up and coming topic over the last few years and actually is being pushed forward in the Water Week, so the Water Conference upcoming as one of the dialogues. What this does, it views water in a holistic manner, that actually what happens on land affects the near shore, but also the marine environment and vice versa, because if the marine environment, for example, is degraded, fisheries are degraded, quality of life potentially is degraded. So the source to sea approach looks at this holistic approach and how it feeds back, but not just from the water sector, but how do the other sectors interact, and what are those interactions, how do you actually govern those interactions? If you have any questions on that, I can sort of give more detailed elaboration later. Just stop me on the side of the conference. Then we have, from the WASH perspective, we have something called the WASH bottleneck analysis tool that was developed in conjunction with UNICEF, where we're looking at to improve efficiency of service delivery, looking at where are the bottlenecks and how can we actually make a plan to address those bottlenecks. It's not plans coming from SIWI, it's actually in a stakeholder-driven process with the stakeholders to find that solution, and then making a plan to address that, and then also feedback mechanisms as well. The third area that I want to touch on would be looking at water demand management. It's a topic that has come up quite a bit this afternoon, but it's something that we are looking at and continue to develop, of saying how can we approach this with our partners to start delivering solutions, but also in light of disasters, in light of climate variability, climate change, how can we actually address some of the pressures and risks that we face? So these are some of the tools that we use and on the ground and daily with our partners. With that, I'll hand over to my colleague, Manal, to go into some of our knowledge generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Yes, this is Manal Schrader. I'm working for SIWI for almost, this is my second year. And I'm working as a MENA program officer. Now I will present more about the activities we do in the MENA region, focusing more on the knowledge generation part. As you see, on the knowledge generation part, we have developed lots of regional studies The first study you see here, it's related to the COVID-19 mapping and how was the response from the governmental institution and the regulators and the local entities. The second study, it's about the WASH in Schools theory of change assessment, and this study, it covers 14 MENA countries, Arabic countries, in two different way of analysis, countries in development and countries in emergency. The third study, regional study, it's about water scarcity and climate change enabling environment assessment. This study covers 14 MENA countries, and I'm happy to announce that this study is officially published on our website, so you can access the study, and maybe Tariq will explain more about the study, because it was conducted in close cooperation and collaboration with UNICEF country offices in MENA countries and the regional office. We also developed studies on water in NDCs, where we addressed the situation and how was water tackled in the national determined contribution. Also studies related to the international policies and the transboundary cooperation. Just want to focus a bit on the enabling environment and the climate change and water scarcity enabling environment. This study addressed 5 different areas: the level of policies, the institutional framework, the planning and monitoring, and the situation of climate finance, and the source of information was based on the ODA data. More insight on water in NDCs. This study highlights, this is a forthcoming study. So it was a global study, but these results highlights more what is the situation in the MENA region. So groundwater management was clearly recognized in this study. Also 85% of the national determined contribution in the Arabic countries address the water management activities, and 70% of these SDCs also address the water supply and infrastructure actions. 60% of these NDCs address the water and energy and the relationship between them, with limited focus on institutional changes, policy, and planning. Another example for our knowledge, on the knowledge generation, but it's not related for the MENA region, but I would like to present it and push for that kind of online courses. And this course focus on the WASH in schools. It's online course. The work package is accessible now. It was implemented in many countries like Indonesia, Malawi, South Africa. Also, this is my favorite program. This is the water integrity, because my first time to work with SIWI, it was in 2014 when they implemented the water integrity capacity building program, and that program was funded by SIDA. And in close coordination with Just University at that time. And I was part of that project. And that project what pushed me to focus more on water integrity and water governance. So we also developed different tools like the integrity management toolkits based on the WIN network tool or integrity work packages, but this toolkit focus more on the institutional development and using the integrity indicators to assess the institutional performance. Here I would like to also give another example for the technical support. As my colleague mentioned that we provide technical support to countries, but here a focus on the climate shift. So we supported many countries in developing climate policy review, and many thanks for UNICEF country offices in the MENA region, because they really work hardly on developing these studies. So we developed these studies based on a partnership agreement between UNICEF and SIWI. The first one was signed in 2018, and we just signed a new one for the next 3 years. So we will work more on the climate change and water scarcity. Also, we have developed the climate finance scanning exercise, many trainings on climate change, but what I really like is the climate rational development, which include full analysis for the climate science, the climate policies, the climate risk assessment, and what kind of solution we can propose. So it gives us the full picture to understand what is the WASH services linked to the climate change impact, linked to the finance for sure. And here, I will close my presentation with some examples from the activities we did, at least for the last 2 years. For example, end of 2022, we have conducted the WASH Reg workshop, and this workshop was conducted in Kurdistan, Iraq. We analyzed the WASH regulation. It was very important to understand the relationship between different stakeholders and to assess the level of monitoring and evaluation of WASH services and the service delivery level in the country. Another example, my colleague Philip just explained about the WASH-BAT tool. So we have implemented this WASH-BAT tool in many countries like Iran, Iraq also. It was implemented in 2019, I think, the first one. But now in Iraq, they managed to replicate that WASH workshop on a local level. So they managed to do that, like, I think 18 workshops so far. So, and finally, we also try to improve the WASH-BAT tool by integrating the climate risk into that tool to assess how much the climate risk affect the WASH sector. And finally, we as SIWI, we try to participate in many regional conferences just to support the region and support the climate agenda, the sustainable development agenda in the region. We also organized many online sessions in the World Water Week. We have participated in the MENA Climate Week, and I wish, like, as a MENA region and the people who's working in the sector to come out with clear key messages to be taken for the global conferences like the UN conference, which is coming soon. Thank you.
So I'm back, but not to speak, just to you could have done it, Ambassador, but it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you, Ambassador Alexandra Rydmark, to deliver a small keynote speech for us this afternoon. So warmly welcome, Alexandra.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone, and thank you for having me back. I had the pleasure of being here for a short while yesterday, and it really is an honor both to participate in the Arab Water Week, but also especially in this session. And I think we've already started out with listening to SIWI and what they do and what they can offer. And I think tying into what we were discussing very much yesterday, I think, and also as you started out with Karen, the numbers and the analysis of water scarcity and climate challenges in the region are well known. And we spoke yesterday of what Sweden is doing in many different aspects, not the least when it comes to development cooperation, where we have taken very much a regional approach, focusing on regional cooperation and the importance of working together on transboundary water resources, but also water governance. And also, as was brought up by many yesterday, the water, energy, food nexus, which is another area where Sweden focuses some of our projects in the region. But I wanted to maybe do the bridge over to why we are here today, and very soon hand over to the experts in the panel to start the discussions. But it is also the importance of research and knowledge. And therefore, my main message today to all of you is really how happy we are that SIWI has announced that they are even about to, very soon, open a regional office here in Amman, which I think says a lot about Jordan and Amman, but also of the importance that we have on these issues. And it is a very good year for Swedish cooperation in the region. And in Jordan, we also welcome the Swedish Dialogue Institute for the Middle East and North Africa, which is also focusing on dialogue and knowledge around sustainable development. And now with SIWI, it's yet another contribution. So from the embassy point of view, we're very much looking forward to having you and your colleagues here. And we hope also that this presence, and I know you are already very active, as was explained by your colleagues in the region, so it's not that you are starting this out now. But we're looking forward to hear more about how you work and to support research, and also to see how we as an embassy and with the colleagues, so at the embassy we have 14 colleagues working on development cooperation, and we have a climate initiative at the embassy focusing on climate, environment, and water issues, and as I said, not the least nexus issues. So I really feel how we're gathering resources here. And also to listen to the colleagues in the panel, we have a lot to learn from you and what it means with resilience in some of the most water-stressed countries in the world. So I'm also looking forward to that. And again, thank you so much for being here, and most of all, welcome to SIWI, to Amman soon, and I'm looking forward to listening to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Looks like my luck. I had a lunch sitting with an ambassador from Sudan. Now I have a luck sitting with an ambassador from Europe, actually.
He's a good friend.
As well. It gives me a pleasure, actually, to be the manager for this part of the session, where we will have panelists. I will introduce them to you. And then, of course, then we will have a closing remark by our great champion, Mr. Khaldun, to the whole session later. So my name is Ismail Al-Azhar Ibrahim. I work for UNICEF for 32 years, different levels, different places, different continents, different situations. And I ended up in the regional office as a senior specialist, retired 2 months ago, and it gives me a great pleasure joined SIWI in their work for MENA. And I am one of those who actually, being a specialist from the area, work very hard encouraging them to make sure they come here and partner, because we feel it's very important. They're a global great player, and it's a time for them to come also and work with us. And I'm sure we're going to enjoy working with them. So I'm working with them now as a senior advisor, ocean climate specialist, helping them to develop a business partnership advocacy model. And I'm sure we're going to talk with lots of you. We met, and we will have more opportunity to introduce more and to go deep in what they said, and instead of moving from think to do in our region. So we are very happy and honored to have them with us. So the panelists for this part of the session, they're going to be Tariq Hassan. Tariq Hassan is a UNICEF, senior UNICEF climate specialist with the regional office. I've known Tariq since he was recruited by the regional office, because he was my colleague. And he's actually the one who initiated, if not most, but all the UNICEF regional office climate change business. He comes from Swiss as a secondment to UNICEF, and he's been actually working very hard, and it's a pleasure to have him today in our session. So let me start by throwing a question to you, Tariq, if you don't mind. In reference to the regional water scarcity, as been mentioned by Manal in some of the document, on climate change enabling environment assessment done 2022, which has also I've been part of those who developed the TUR, which was conducted by both SIWI and UNICEF. Of course, the assessment found that financing and capacity development was measured using financial criteria, performing worst. This wasn't doing well. So what are the core recommendations, do you think, to overcome the existing challenges related to improving the enabling environment of the sector financing and operational capacity? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ismail. I hope this microphone works well. I'll start by thanking Aqua for organizing this week. I also like to thank SIWI for inviting us and me in particular here today in this session. I also like to congratulate SIWI for the opening of their new office for the Wana region. And indeed, I'm also very happy that came out like very recently this report on the enabling environment assessments in the region level, which is published on their website and also on UNICEF's website. You can find it quite easily by doing a research. And this report indeed looked into the problem that, according to the FAO, 14 out of 17 countries are among the most water-stressed countries in the world. But the fact that it's so complicated to have water at the tap, it's not just related to the availability of water or the fact that there's hydrometeorological conditions which impact on water. It's also the way that the water itself is managed by us as societies. So this report indeed is looking into the governance aspects. And UNICEF, we really need to understand that, and thanks to the expertise that SIWI provided, we could go all the way through to all these different countries in the region, which are all very different from one from the other. But some bigger pictures did come out from the report. So the report looked into the 5, let's say, pillars or blocks from the sanitation and water for all that Malna presented early on. So the 5 of them, if I'm correct, so there's one about strategies and policies, there's one about institutional arrangement, there's finance, capacity building, and planning and monitoring. Well, clearly at the region, actually, it came out that the planning and strategy was actually quite good. However, there could be stronger links between the WASH and the water resource policies, and including links from the climate change aspects into these policies and strategies. There was also missing, we believe at the regional level, at least according to the report, there could be stronger early warning systems to address droughts, as well as joint sectorial reviews. However, as Ismail pointed out clearly, there was two blocks from this report which shows there could be better. One of them was the finance aspect, and the other one was the capacity building aspect. And in many ways they're linked, because in many ways they're linked to finance. So the report showed that in terms of finance, there could be stronger finance into a few countries. So the recommendation which came out is certain countries would need more finance. At the same time, we should not reduce the climate financing for the countries which seem to be better served at the time being. Also related to the financing component, it seems that per person, the capita climate finance since the last decade has not changed at all, while the situation is getting more and more dire. So it's a call here basically to the donor community to look deeper into this and to make sure that the MENA region is properly addressed and looked into. Which brings us, I suppose, appropriately to the capacity building component. So indeed, to address the whole governance topic, well, it needs to have stronger skills, capacity, and to do that, well, there are ways to do it, and we think we know how to do it, but it will require, again, finance. So the capacity building plan itself need proper financing. So if I could just sum this all up, basically, it's not just that the situation is either physical or technical on the ground. There is some sort of governance. There is a lot of governance that we discovered, well, us as UNICEF now know, that needs to be addressed.
1 minute left.
I'm finished right now. Yeah. And now, thanks to this report, we're going to do this step by step. And thank you all. Back to you, Ismail.
Thank you so much, Tariq. I'm really sorry for interrupting you, but
No
it's a time which has been given to us, actually. Let me jump now here, and as I forgot to mention beginning of the introduction to the panelist, this is a panelist probably picked up by SIWI, seems to be the relevant to their interventions and their partners in the business. So hopefully we're going to expand and get more of them on the way. Now, the second panelist is Professor Majid. Professor Majid is a professor of water resources and environmental engineering at Jordan University of Science and Technology. He currently the director of the Water Diplomacy Center, and he's one of actually the engineers behind that module. He's known of his many papers and many research and many interventions. It's a pleasure to have you with us in this panel, Professor. Based on your experience, Professor, working in research institution, the question, what do you see as a role of research and training in strengthening water governance and improving the resilience of the region in light of climate change? Thank you. 5 minutes.
Thank you. 5 minutes? Thank you, Professor. Just have to see like this, and then I will know. Thank you very much, and I would like first to thank the Dr. Khashman and the Aqua for organizing such an important event, and also for the SIWI for inviting us to talk on their panel of discussion. And I am really looking for to start a long and lasting cooperation with SIWI, knowing that they are establishing a regional office here in Jordan. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Good. Yes. So, as an educator and a university professor, I think education is behind everything. And I would maybe point out to a book that I have read a couple of years ago called Factfulness. And it's written by a guy, his name Hans Rollings. I think he's a Finnish. Swedish. Swedish. Thank you very much. Yes. And basically, he was saying that the world is better than what we think. This is his message. And indeed, the world is better than what we think, because there are so many advances in disease, in education, women education, and in life, increasing life expectancy. It's all improved, even though we cannot see it. But he stressed the point that if you want to change things, then you have to educate it. And he gave a clear example that the donors were carrying a program to decrease the population or the birth rate in a country. And they spent millions of dollars for hospitals, for health, for pills, for programs. But finally he said, now, if you educate the society, spend money on education, then the society will itself indeed control his birth rate. That's fact. We look at the Jordan, for example, when the society is really educated, then the family member has decreased from maybe 8 members to 4, only 4, maybe an average of 3. This is only by education. You don't have to do anything. So this applies to water sector and governance. What we think is sometimes really educators are puzzled what they do. But I like Karen when she said, when you do things, then you have the legitimacy to think, yes. So we think and we like to go further. Now, the educator, they teach the students. We do research in the lab. I did research, for example, in my research. I did a small research, a small column experiment. We show that when you irrigate with wastewater, then actually the atrazine, which is one of the pesticides that applies in the soil, it leaches faster. So this tends to a policy. Now our role as educator is to put these facts in front of the governing body, that they will put a legislation for that. For example, don't irrigate wastewater with other chemicals that will leach faster to the groundwater. So the governance, of course, the governance is a two-sided solution. We have to, in order to manage water, and if we are now focusing in water, it has two factors: reducing the demand and increasing the supply of water. But you know, it's not easy to do that. In a country, in MENA region, we have by nature, we have the most stressed countries in the world in terms of the availability of water to fresh water, for example. So the rainfall is decreasing. So this is, how can we change it? I don't know. Now, climate change, which I sometimes call the students, is a human change, to be honest. A human who's changing the climate cannot change by itself. And I give them example, for example, the shrinking of the Dead Sea, or the disappearance of the Aral Sea, or the disaster in the San Joaquin Valley. Is it nature? It's a human. And even the human. So we have to educate and change the behavior of the human, then everything will go fine.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, yeah. So the other thing in our particular climate change, to add insult to injury, we have the human disaster and the refugees and going back and forth in this country, displacements of people. That really makes the things worse. Now the last thing is to put salt on the wound. We have the transboundary issues, which our center is working on it. In Jordan, for example, 60% of our water is coming at transboundary. So unless we have the capacity to deal with transboundary, and of course we have to deal with all these four, and these four factors, unfortunately, they are, for example, exists in a country like Jordan or in most of the MENA countries. They are not existing in Sweden, for example. We have abundant water, or in Canada, where I graduate. So to conclude, education is the key to change, and it could have a direct effect that we could actually contribute to policies and recommendations, but also indirect effect, like producing experts people to the field of water. And Manal is actually one of our students. She is one of, we educate her to become an influential part of this initiative. So I would conclude with this. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the professor. And actually, Manal is one of the SIWI localization. It's great to have her. She's a champion. Now, our third panelist is one of the actually local champions, Muflih. Muflih, I've known him for a long time. He's been working with SIDA and with SDC, and he's been doing lots of work in the region. We worked during the humanitarian crisis, we worked during the development crisis, and he's been one of the champions. And also SDC was somehow as a partner with SIWI in a long way on the initiatives and the programs being mentioned, as well as issues in our region. And they're going to work more, of course, in the climate and issues. So my question to you, Mr. Mufleh, as a regional water advisor representing Swiss Corporation, what are the recommended guidelines, do you think, to assist countries impacted by the transboundary water issues? You've been working on those issues. And what are the, taking them from the lesson learned as best examples, if you don't mind? Thank you. 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank again to Aqua and to SIWI. And I will start from our neighborhood, that we are the two embassies next to each other, Switzerland and SIDA, that we are lucky as well. The second thing, we initiated the first transboundary water initiative in this region by Switzerland and Sweden, which is called Blue Beach in 2010, based on a study carried out in this region. Means we are, from the beginning, looking to this as a potential for peace, or might be, will be very fragile area for conflict. Therefore, we address it from the beginning. And when you ask me about the guideline, I would like to give you a practical example, because we exist here to find solution, practical solution. There are a lot of publication, a lot of things show how many challenges, what are the transboundary challenges. I will not go to these details because everybody knows about it. But there are some hopes at the end of the day. Some of the disaster, which is very sad, but they give us lessons, like the earthquakes. It is actually natural disaster, but they don't know borders. Without exchanging the data and the information over these shared resources, we will be all victims at the end of the day. And I think this is what we are missing, specifically by the downstream country. They still use the old and the traditional, let's say, approach in negotiation water with upstream country. They are using the cubic, I call it the cubic meter negotiation model, which is no longer work. They have to change the water narrative negotiation approach from this part to more shared benefits approach, and to put it in the middle of stability, middle of sustainable development, in the middle of peace building, in the middle of commercial exchange. No longer we can consider and deal the water as a standalone. What does this mean? It is still very challenging at national level. Without having this exercise, homework done probably at national level, we will not be able to negotiate with upstream country level. Therefore, from my experience, and from a study that we did in this region, there is no any wide basin sustainable agreement exist in this region. They are talking about a specific thing, very fragile, and not considering the wide basin. Despite 80% from the people in the Middle East lived in basin, shared basin, and there's no any sustainable basin. Why? Because they use the old traditional approach. We launched an initiative called Blue Beach Middle East with Sweden, and we start localizing this basin like Manal in the region. One of the localization, and it's our colleague, Dr. Majid, he's sitting here, and he is now the director of the Water Diplomacy Center that's supported by Switzerland. And the main thing now with this Water Diplomacy Center is to work in 3 pillars. First, education in water diplomacy. Second, they will provide capacity building for the negotiator, for different students as well. And the third one, they will provide evidence-based studies and provide scenarios for the recipient's country how to come to more win-win situation. This is actually, next week we will launch the Blue Beach Middle East, where the Water Diplomacy Center will react as a regional hub for the MENA region. It's not just for Jordan.
You have
it's
1
based
minute.
in Jordan, but it's in for the MENA region. Okay. The second localization, we establish regional mechanism for the region to discuss the water challenges, chaired by His Royal Highness Prince Hassan bin Talal, and we have a representative from Syria, from Iraq, from Lebanon, from Turkey, and from Iraq. And they will meet next week here. We are not mediator. We are not mediating. We are enabling the environment. We are showing them what will be the benefit of cooperation and the cost of no cooperation. Therefore, now this regional mechanism is regionally owned and managed. We are a Switzerland observer, and we are happy now to see the Blue Beach now is regionally owned and managed. And we are gradually will withdraw and hand over the Blue Beach to the region. And one of them is the Water Diplomacy Center, and we will have this actually react as a regional hub for the region. I think I am on time, right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
By this, I'd like to announce that we supposed to have two other panelists, but unfortunately, due to some logistic, they could not be here, UNDP and World Bank. I guess I have finished my 20 minutes. Thank you very much, Engineer Tariq from UNICEF, climate expert. Thank you very much, Professor Mait from the JUST. Thank you very much, Muflih from SDC. Now, I guess it's the last word. Karen, you want to introduce Khaldun? Do you have anything in between, or you want?
I don't know. Maybe we want to take a few questions if we have time.
Maybe, please. Floor is open for you guys. Palestine. Engineer Hamid.
Thank you very much.
Introduce yourself, please. Your name and yourself.
My name is Mohammed Saeed Al Hamidi.
You're coming
I'm
from?
the CEO of the Palestine Water Sector Regulatory Council.
Sure.
First, congratulations for having an officer man. That's very much needed. I have seen your tools, I've used them, and I believe that I would be expecting soon, coming from the officer man, the localized governance toolkit. If you are doing that, please look into differentiation between traditions, norms, understandings between the Arab region countries. If you can unify those in your toolkit, that would be fantastic. It was said that SIWI is bridging between science, policy, and practice. And Dr. Khaled talked about the added value of education. I would like to see a formula, again, bridging private, public education. What formula can we have those together? The third thing is that the toolkits we have so far talk about water sector. But you know that water resources are mostly politically driven, if you talk about transboundary, while water services are attitude driven. Should we use the same governance toolkits in both cases, or the resources as well as the water services? If we can have an answer, should it be one or two? Again, we have in the region, as you said, lots of crises. Some of these are old crises, protracted crises, and emerging crises. Should we use the same toolkit in the three areas where we have old crises, emerging crises, or protracted crises? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question, please. Your name, your function, your organization.
Hi, my name is Lara Nassar. I'm from NOFIC. It's a Dutch organization to internationalize education. I would like to maybe ask a question. It's very nice to see that education is part of this discussion, because in the first panels during the first day, I thought that education, the whole component of education was missing. But I'd like to maybe shed light on the fact that currently, donors are no longer wanting to invest in higher education, which is very sad in our case, and are moving towards TVET and VET. Hala, if we want to talk about this practically, it makes sense because now the whole thing is shifting towards TVET, where youth can find better employment opportunities, especially in the green growth sector. NOFIC is working hard on finding ways to do that. But it would be quite interesting for me to see what you think about this huge shift. And if we, as organizations like NOFIC, who capitalize on skill sets and upskilling and the TVET sector, are we going to miss the information needed for future generations that are going to be needed in the water governance sector? And how can we, as organizations and NGOs, be able to change that shift, making sure that youth can still go to higher education or have higher education opportunities, but still find a job? Because a lot of the youth, especially in many of the scientific sectors, let's say, have amazing degrees, but cannot find a job. So what can we do about this? Thank you.
Thank you. Another question, and then we'll answer, and then we'll go for a group question. Anybody else? Sayyid Khaldun?
I will talk now as I want to ask something or talk about something. Well, I was from the people who were in the water sector when the peace negotiations and the joint committees were acting between the three countries, actually, with Jordan. The three, North, South also, Saudi Arabia, and West. And I remember, and beside me, my friend and my boss, Dr. Hazem, there was a lot of experts who were working in negotiations since 1994, or before that, 2 years before, when the 93, when there was negotiation to reach to the peace agreement, at least between Jordan and Israel, and the same Oslo results. Now, those people are now no more existing in positions. And after that, when I came as the Secretary General of the Ministry, I found, I found that we have gap in the trained people who has the knowledge to go and sit for negotiation. And this is not easy skills. I remember that time I asked ISQA to come and give us a training program in Jordan. And it was not only for the people working in the water sector. We called some people from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the Intelligence Department, from the Real Court, from the Prime Minister Office, and we formed a big team, 5 days closed session, and we refreshed those people and give them the tools, how he will sit and negotiate. And you know, it is big scenarios. And I left my office at that time and stayed with them for 5 days. Now, also, those people now are out. Now, still there is joint committees running on. With Saudi Arabia, we have a joint committee. With Syria, I know it is now, there is a hold on, but still, Yarmouk is there. And with the Israeli side is there. I'm talking now only about Jordan. But the same case in Egypt. And in the morning, the Iraqis, friends and brothers, they were talking only about the shared resources with Iran and Turkey. I think I'm now addressing Dr. Abu Zarer. Really, we need to refresh and bring new generation to sit and negotiate. And talking about negotiation, it's not only countries, but also the users in Europe, the stakeholders on Rhine or any river, they sit and they make negotiation to see how we give to fishing, to agriculture, to hydropower, etc. So I think this is one of the tasks we have to take care of it.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's end up with these 3 questions and the remarks, 2 questions and the remarks. Professor, I guess you have the last one, right?
Education can answer the 3 questions, but I will.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
no problem.
but I will start with the last one because I remember it very well. Atuftak. Absolutely. I would like to thank Muflih actually for speaking about my center and me more than myself, which is a good approach actually, good tactic, you know, not to speak about yourself. But so that's a good thing. Actually, this is one of our core objectives, activities, and output is to educate and capacity buildings. Now, actually, some people, they use capacity building as, I use education. I don't know, you know, the big difference, maybe the donors, they have a differentiation, but anyway, we are establishing a series, a series of short courses with the credit hours, actually, because the students can take them and carry them with you for any other educational program on water diplomacy, on transboundary water issues, transboundary negotiations skill, conflict resolutions, international water law, water governance, with the close cooperation with IHE Delphi and Geneva Water Hub, and hopefully also with SIWI, and they have also a big experience. So we have built up a structured plan for that. In addition, Mifleh knows also, we propose to establish a water diplomacy unit in Jordan, in the Ministry of Irrigation, or maybe in the Royal Court. Whoever influential enough to take the decision on these issues, then we will work with them to establish this permanent unit. And I always preach for the education institutions in Jordan to take part, because as you said, education personnel actually in university, they have long life, employment life. I mean, we work for 30 years, or maybe for 35 years. Whereas the employees at the ministries or the government institutions, once they retire, sometimes, well, Dr. Hazim, he's still working so hard in his capacity as
all of us.
Yeah, all of you, yes. But for example, when we start a negotiation with Syria on the agreement that has been concluded in 1987, I believe, started 54. So the Syrian, they say, well, whenever we meet again every year, your team keep changing, the Jordanian, one of the negotiators. But they have the same team for 20 years. So these changes, of course, we are not paying attention enough to build this water diplomacy or diplomacy unit or water negotiation units with, of course, technical support and also soft skills.
Can you answer Zara also, Professor?
Well, yes, education is a behavioral change. Education is a behavioral change. Although we build in the governance, we count on the governance as a game changer. Education is the game changer. For example, I myself believe in micro solutions of people for climate change resilience. Micro solutions means that people take their own initiatives. For example, believing in rainwater harvesting in their houses, believing in it and actually constructing it, believing in soil, on micromanagement of agricultural field, soil micro catchment areas where for example the Napatians and the people who live in the Najaf in 100 millimeter per year area, they can build trees. So these micro solutions, they can make a difference in some cases. I built a water cistern in my house, in my modern house actually. It can enough for 6 months of rainwater is enough for me, 6 months of complete water security. So micro solutions, now the financing should support this initiative with people. Now the government should say, okay, this micro solution can solve the problem actually. They can build resilience of people for climate change, for rainfall temporal and variability. When we combine the government or the institutional setup to support the micro initiative of population of people, then we can make a difference.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm going to the question of bridging, maybe between Your Excellency, and Karen, if you want to give a word. But Muflih want to elaborate quickly to the Professor?
Very quickly, because Engineer Khaldun, he raised a very important point. What we actually recognize in this region, out of some study, we did some studies in the region, it's not a matter of capacity only. It's a matter of lack of institutionalizing the ideas. For example, when we come to Jordan, an example, or any other countries, there is no units or organization that have the backup or the data, updated data when it comes to transboundary. Doesn't mean the unit will lead the transboundary negotiation, no. They can act as backstopper for the negotiator. For example, what are the latest updated data? Because the main problem in the agreement in the Middle East, they don't meet the criteria of the model agreement, which is identified globally. The most advanced agreement, let's say, we found in this region is meet just the 3 categories or 3 indicators out of 17. Means no significant harm to cause for the downstream countries not exist. Climate change is not exist. For example, environmental sector or ecosystem is not there. So when we look all to this agreement, they are actually lacking a lot of indicator. Then we jump again to the narrative blaming each other that we are violating agreement, which is not true. The problem in the agreement, they are badly developed. This is the issue. Therefore, when you have an agreement, you have to look to the agreement whether this is actually valid or not. And the problem in our region is not because of the country, they are not cooperating, the agreement are badly developed. This is one of the key components that we need to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Karin, if you want to answer the question of the bridging. And Tariq also after that.
Yes. Well, it is a privilege, of course, to come in late in answering the questions because I can piggyback on what many of you have already said. But let me just emphasize one aspect that I think is absolutely critical when it comes to aspects of capacity building and education. Let's not forget that research, knowledge products, etc., they are perishable goods. They need to be constantly updated, brought up to the latest developments. We need to build in aspects of innovation in that. And that goes also for aspects of water governance. We need to be innovative when it comes to water governance. The world is changing, and we need also to adapt to that, very much so. And I think that this identification of the gaps in the capacity building and in those individuals that sit on a daily basis in the administrations having to make decisions when it comes to water management, water governance, infrastructure, systems, etc. That identification is absolutely critical to be able to respond in an adequate manner to that demand and to that need. And we need to not only look in theory at the development of tools and methodologies and try to unify them and make them, the truth and the model that will be implemented for the foreseeable future. No, we need to be constantly there, adapting, testing it, seeing, does it work? Can it be improved? What is the best suited? And that's exactly where this bridging comes in, Ismail, is really trying to see how can we learn from what has worked, what the good practices are. I'm not saying best practices. As you note, I say good practices because there are no best practices, there are good practices. How can we learn from those, adapt in a continuous circle the tools, the methodologies, the trainings, the capacity buildings, the workshops, all of that, and learn from that and see. And this is not something that you do a one-off. It's not one donor setting a 1 or 2 year program of capacity building and then pulling out and said, okay, my work here is done. This is something that needs constant attention because, again, it is perishable good. So it needs to be constantly kept fresh, kept innovative, kept at the top of the curve. And it's trying to make these research applicable, usable, and user-friendly, and therefore making it also pedagogical enough that non-scientific and academic experts that sit and make those decisions can use them and adapt them and make informed and thereby better decisions. And I think it's that exercise of trying to make the scientific research user-friendly and adaptable that is also one of the roles that we see as SIWI in trying to contribute to bridging this gap in terms of capacity of making very good and informed decisions.
Thank you very much, Karin. Tariq, you want to say a few words?
Yes, I think I'd like to piggyback on what Karen just said. So UNICEF, of course, education is quite important for us, and both here, I would say, in terms of understanding what the environmental questions are in the curriculum or extracurriculum questions, but also we want to have a better understanding of one of the indicators of the SDG, I think it's SDG 13.3.3, of where these questions are and how they are addressed at the world level, but also here in MENA. We're also very interested about the green skills question, of course, so that the youth can actually acquire these green skills. So here we're partnered up with ILO so that actually you can have these sort of earning to learning approach. And for us, it's what we call an accelerator in our region. It's something we're taking very seriously. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tariq. Let me just give a few quick questions. Husham from Sudan. Try to be brief. Mike.
Hisham from Sudan. Welcome SIWI in the region. And we already have relations through UNICEF, lastly with region of UNICEF for 14 countries, especially in Sudan in emergency for risk assessment. And really we look for what we done through your organization, because talking about diplomacy, negotiation, that things really we need it, because especially in transboundary, in WASH, and we look really to see you not in emergency but also in development aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hisham. I think that comes from the issues related to the Nile and what comes from the Ethiopia and Egypt. I'll give the floor to Her Excellency Ambassador Shahira.
Thank you for giving me the floor.
No, Arabic.
I am Shahira Wahbi, the Director of the Department of Housing, Water Resources and Disaster Risk Reduction at the League of Arab States. And I'm also the head of the Technical Secretariat of the Arab Water Ministerial Council. Actually, when I look at all the interventions and the final aim of this session, it talks about governance. The highest governance body in the region is the Arab Ministerial Water Council. These are the decision takers concerning all the water issues in the region. So there are existing institutional framework in the region that can be used to fortify these governance processes. However, we as Technical Secretariat, we face many challenges due to many shortcomings here and here. So addressing the challenges faced for these existing fora is one of the methods for fortifying the path towards governance being a path towards water secure region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let's take two questions and then.
It's not really a question. My name is Abdurrahman Sultan. I'm from EcoPeace Middle East. And I would like really to compliment what you all have said about the role of science and the role of inclusion. And I would like to see, because in our region we have seen lots of disengagement of youth groups and many other groups, women groups, etc., from the policy making and from negotiation. We are teaching climate diplomacy ourselves at EcoPeace and trying to educate people about water reality, climate reality, etc. And I think that the one disadvantage of having a very high level of decision makers is lack of inclusion of other groups. And this is very important because so many remarks that was mentioned by Engineer Khaldoon, yes, about lack of experienced people in negotiation and in diplomacy, etc., is needed to become part of the culture of the people working in the water, climate, and development sector, and probably a society at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed Hussein from Libya. The last one. But I'm sorry, I'm being told the time. السريع طيب. وبعدين محمد حسين.
Thank you so much, Chief. First of all, I would like just to echo what Dr. Majid said about I'm one of your students, proudly. I'm one of your students, and I'm now the WASH regional advisor for one of the international organizations. It's not only the education where you're like you put people with proper knowledge or a qualification in the right place, but also you can play and have and treble your impact in advocating for the proper action across all layers of stakeholders around the water sector. One question, if you may, regarding developing leadership in the sectors, youth empowerment and creating leaders, not only with all due respect to the importance of equipping people with the proper knowledge and information and capacity building, but also to have the full package of creating leaders in the sector who can impact and can have enforce solutions on the ground in the future, not only education only in the equation or in the mixture, but for example in Jordan here we had golden era for the water sector, Dr. Hazem, Mohandes Khaldoon, and all of those, and with time, as he said, with all turnover people across all sector bodies, we are losing this institutional knowledge to be shifted or transferred across generation. So we want action to capture this leadership, not sure what to call it, like pushing, creating, developing leaders in the sector, not only educated people in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed Hussein from Libya, and that was the last question. I hope, be short, Mohammed.
Yes. Good afternoon, all people here. First of all, let me thank Engineer Khaldoon and the Aqua team for organizing this event. We are really impressed of the efforts that it has been put in place. And also, I'd like to congratulate SIWI for opening the office in Amman. My experience with the SIWI, we have in UNICEF Libya, we have organized the BAT exercise, but unfortunately, due to security circumstances, the exercise took place in Tunis. So I wish next time we will have it in Libya so we can increase the number of participants. Second thing, with the support of regional office, SIWI has developed climate change and water scarcity analysis, which has been used as a supporting document to receive a fund from one of the donor, and luckily we have received that fund. So we are really thankful for your efforts.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Hussein from Libya. He meant by the regional office UNICEF here. Now, panelists, I have only 2 minutes for you to answer before I invite Khaldoon for the closing. So, who want to? 2 minutes I have.
I will, 1 minute I hope. I'd like to thank Sudan for your words. Indeed, for us, the transboundary question is quite new. We relate it to a humanitarian crisis that we see across the region. That's why we're trying to intervene quite recently and with the support of SIWI. So we're a multilateral agency. We depend on international treaties. If they don't exist, we're not sure what we can do, but most of them actually have signed the Convention for the Child Rights, and we have this child right perspective, and that's, I think, the angle that we're going to follow. For the League Arab State, for us, with children, of course, it's our topmost priority to support the Arab League. That might relate to the question related to standards and norms asked early on by one of the gentlemen here, because I think that UNICEF, it's beyond us, but the Arab League might have that perspective. And when it comes to the youth engagement, to negotiations, that is us our topmost priority for this year. In our climate approach, we're going to look into how the youth enter all the negotiations rooms as part of national delegations. They will be trained. They'll have their own agenda, and UNICEF will be once we have supported them, we'll be in the back seat, and they will do the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, just a few words. Thank you so much for all the very nice comments. We really feel very, very welcome to the region, which is really heartwarming. When it comes to generating these leaders or these experts in the field of water. One approach we have taken...
Karim, bring the microphone close.
Sorry. One approach we've taken at SIWI is to facilitate networks to really allow for peer-to-peer learning and South-South cooperation in that sense. So we have a network of, for example, women in water diplomacy, where women across the regions can sit together in a room and really share experiences in a safe space, so they can really say, hey, listen, in my ministry, this is what challenge I face. How did you deal with it in your case? Did you succeed, etc.? And that really gives them that level of empowerment where they come into the negotiation room the next time and feel much more powerful, much more skilled for carrying out those negotiations. We have a similar network when it comes to journalists, for instance, to really also try to build their ability to report correctly, objectively, on some of the water challenges that exist, be they transboundary, be they national, irrespective of the dimensions. So really trying also to create and capacitate the journalists to also take on that. And when it comes to the youth, yes, absolutely, I can only agree there. As a SIWI, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we have the privilege and the honor of also organizing the Stockholm Junior Water Prize competition, which is really a way to generate innovative ideas and create, I would say, almost a national movement of innovation and idea generation in youth in the water sector. And of course, these are the future leaders when it comes to the water sector. So that is also something where through national organizations and national partners, we're very much trying to reach out to our youth constituency. But again, from SIWI, we have, I would say, 3 cross-cutting issues, as we call, 3 aspects of inclusion that we try to mainstream in absolutely every single one of our programs and projects: gender, youth, human rights-based approach, and we add indigenous peoples in that. So we really try to have those aspects and to cover them. It doesn't say that it's not a challenge. That's not what I'm saying, but we're at least having the ambition of wanting to address all of these aspects.
Thank you very much, Karen. Professor, you have half minute. Half minute.
Yeah, thank you. Again, the half minute is finished. Again, the strong governance and institutions are a must, actually, to take our education efforts, the bottom-up approach, and to take our educators, the youngs, the youths, the women seriously. So if this works together, then we will build the strong institutions state-wise. And then the Arab League will have a strong also governance body where they were using our updated research and our updated education, as you put it, Karen, to be backstoppers. And these institutions will use this information to build the strong institutions that will influence everybody. And that's all.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much, panelists, for the nice reflections. Now, before the end of the sessions, we have 5 minutes for you, Engineer Khaldoon, Your Excellency, just to come up and close the session. From anywhere. It is your show.
Not mine. No, I'm a guest. Good afternoon. I would like to say to Karen, regardless to the food, they were very active. Thank you again. I would like to recall my memory when we started Aqua, that we launched Aqua in the 1st of January 2009. We opened our office. It's a good story, by the way. And we're sitting to see somebody come and tell us hello. Organizations and associations were new to our region. And I came from a public sector. I used to be the Secretary General of the ministry. I decided to leave and join Aqua. Then we had a call. There was somebody, they said their name Sida. I know there is Swedish Sida and Canadian, but S and C. Then two ladies came and they asked us, what do you want? Let us hear from you. Within a discussion, we got a financing for 2 of our best technical working groups. And we took management of utility and utility reform. And the result was 2 books for every subject, case studies and what to do. This is our first project. We did it with SIDA. The second with SIWI, with GIZ, we developed the tab manuals. And we apply it to all the regions, and it gives amenity for our utilities to prevent corruption. The third with ISQA, for the Arab Water League, we did the MDG Plus. And Aqua was hosting all the process of collecting data. So it is a long partnership. And again, I would like to insist that we in Aqua will be very cooperative with SIWI. And keeping in mind we signed an agreement in Abu Dhabi together, it's a good start. We are very happy to have this. We know what SIWI they can do, at what we need. And actually, after this presentation, I found there are many things that we needed. Again, keeping in mind also COVID and the previous, the unrest in some countries, now there's a big gap. We have to educate a new generation to lead. And by talking about leadership, what Mr. Tawil was asking, we in Aqua developed a good trainings program about leadership empowerment for managing utility, and we did it with UNICEF once on the regional level. Now I would like really, very happy to be with you here, and I am inviting you to have your coffee break in celebration of opening the SIWI, inshallah, on the 1st of May. Thank you.